Well, that's tough. That's a stinging loss for the Indianapolis Colts to end their 2020 season. Kevin Bowen back. Another edition of Kevin's Corner. Wanted to come at you on Saturday night and just get a quick pod, relatively quick pod up. And Chris Presley and I will come back probably midweek next week, depending on when these season-ending press conferences are for Frank Reich, players, Chris Ballard, etc. And then we'll get to our off-season schedule. But man, that's you just feel like so many missed opportunities, and I think that's what especially has to sting for Colts fans. That you felt like this was a game that you were very much in, and yeah, there were some moments, maybe kind of late third quarter, early fourth, when you got down 2 scores. All right, is it going to get away from you? But sure enough, you had chances again late fourth quarter as well. I think we'll point to maybe a little bit earlier in the game where you had opportunities, I think, to really play from ahead, put serious game pressure on Buffalo. And when you miss those chances, you felt like you were playing with fire. And, unfortunately, this is what playoff football's about. You can play with fire and beat the Texans. You can't play with fire and necessarily win playoff games. And that's why the Colts find themselves starting their offseason on Saturday night. But boy, you talk about a legit chance to pull off this upset. And we'll get into things that I like, things that I didn't like, and basically focus on the dozen or so Twitter questions I got that are just specifically related to kind of the game. Obviously we're going to have so much time for the offseason stuff, but again, I wanted to make sure that we focus just on recapping today's loss, and then we'll have plenty of time to get into all that stuff. But I guess overall, just my thoughts. This was not some 2 seed just dominating a 7 seed. I feel like, and I said this on Thursday night's Beers with Bowen, I feel like the Colts have a legit chance to make this a really close game in the fourth quarter. I picked 31-24 was my score, and I said I don't feel like this is going to be a backdoor cover. I think this is going to be a really close game, and I seemed, at least based off, I think, some of the national chatter, I felt like I was in the minority. It seemed like everybody thought Buffalo by 2 scores and running away with it. But really from the opening drive and certainly throughout much of that first half, the Colts, I thought, were the better team. And you were executing that blueprint, time of possession, dominant. I think you had it for more than 9 minutes than Buffalo. Field position. I mean, you talk about dominant. It was a 15-yard advantage. Average drive start. I mean, the field's only 100 yards long. And your average drive start was a first down and a half ahead of where Buffalo was. I think Buffalo was the 15-yard line. You were the 30, and that's ideal, forcing the Bills into those long drives. Obviously got Taylor and Hines going. I think your rush yards are over 160 for the game, over 5 yards per carry. So all those things, in your favor. You certainly won third down. I think you were over 50%. Buffalo was 2 of 9. That's the best, third down team in the NFL, and they struggle to that degree. And just so many things were going right. And if you showed me a box score before the game, so many things that I would say, wow, oh yeah, Colts are gonna have a great chance. All that stuff. And unfortunately, the missed opportunities just, and really all 3 facets of the game will come back to haunt you. I saw the stat from Elias that mentioned that they're the first playoff team in history to have over 450 yards and no turnovers and lose. So again, that just goes to show you the amount of missed opportunities that the Colts had in this football game. And we touched on it last week, both on Monday's pod and certainly Thursday Beers with Bowen. These chances don't grow on trees. And I think that is what, again, stings. I mean, outside of the fact of just being a fan, you want to watch your team play the Kansas City Chiefs next week, and you want to have that hope for another week. But you also just realize that these aren't a guarantee. And that's why Phillip Rivers was so emotional after the game. And again, he's in a different age bracket, so it's a little bit different for him. But it was such a tremendous opportunity. You put yourself in a position to pull off that upset, and yet you squandered it with a lot of self-inflicted mistakes. Certainly, Buffalo made some tremendous plays, and Josh Allen is a special talent. but you felt like it was a lot of your own mistakes in why you are starting your offseason here on Saturday night. So wanted to get kind of just some overall thoughts out of the way. We will follow, I guess, a little bit of a blueprint of what I didn't like, what I liked from the game. Let's start with what I didn't like, and I guess we'll just kind of rattle off these mistakes that were made. I want to first focus on what I thought was the big sequence in which the game turned from you felt like the Colts were kind of in control to where now all of a sudden Buffalo was in control and really played from the lead and had a multi-score lead at times the rest of the way. But I thought the end of the first half, that's where everything changed for me. I thought it worked out in the Colts' favor that Buffalo ended up deferring that opening coin toss, and you got the ball to start. Colts got that early lead, and I think I tweeted this out during the first half, but definitely harped on this last week. I felt like the end of the first half was going to be critical, especially if the Colts got the ball to start, because that obviously means Buffalo gets the ball to start at the third, and you've just got to manage that end of the first half really well. And it couldn't have gone worse for the Colts, and certainly a unfolding of 2 minutes that I really am still stunned by, more so what happened defensively than offensively. But let's start here. It's 10-7, 3 minutes to go in that first half. You've got a first and goal. I think that Trey Burton got the shovel pass on first and goal. Then you have the Nyheim Hines Wildcat. I was fine with both of those. I think they're both creative plays. Colts have had some success with them this season. And so now you got the third and goal at the 1, and the 2-minute warning happens. And I mean, boy, Frank said afterwards, he kind of debated, all right, do you go goal line personnel? Do you load it up? Do you use Jonathan Taylor there inside? Or do you do something different? And Frank decided to do something different with that pitch to the left with Taylor. And I just think in that situation, the second and third effort out of Jonathan Taylor in between the tackles was so potent for you. I mean, hell, him jumping over the line, I feel like it's something that we've seen this season as well. You could go there in that situation. But when you go to that pitch, that leaves a higher amount of risk. And I just thought in that situation, honestly, I would have liked to have seen maybe a pitch on fourth and goal from the 1, then third and goal from the 1. Because I just still think that you are in kind of that 2-down nature to where if you get stuffed on fourth and goal at the 1, third and goal at the 1, running it up the middle, you still obviously have, a very manageable situation to go for it on fourth down. If you run that pitch, you run the risk for what happened. And you are seeing on that play, Ashton Doolin, who seldom plays, is in the football game there and is having to block Mario Addison, who outweighs him by 50 pounds. And Addison blows that play up, and Taylor is in no man's land, and Buffalo swarms and makes a play. I thought it was a horrible play call by Frank, and there was a lot of good that Frank did on Saturday. Getting Michael Pittman involved, the general flow of the offense. You managed a pretty darn good early start to that football game. But when you're in the red zone, more falls on your plate. And in the month of January, you're held to a higher standard. And flat out, that was a terrible, terrible coaching decision and play call by Frank Reich there. And again, Doolin is almost left on an island a bit. Where's the thought of, who are my all-pros? Oh, Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly, and Jonathan Taylor is showing, again, great second and third effort with his leg. I mean, he keeps his legs moving so well. Boy, I just hated that. Hated that play call. And I know that we critique and analyze Frank a lot. That's part of life of being a play caller in the NFL. But man, that decision proved very, very costly there. I was fine with going for it on fourth and goal. Obviously kind of a near miss there. I mean, Rivers, it seemed like had Pittman, a diving Pittman there. And, at the same time, you are forcing Buffalo to be backed up. But I thought that sequence, starting there, you have a chance to go up 17-7 at half, or at least 17-7, and then your defense is back on the field with, a minute 45 to go, something like that. I thought that gave Buffalo some hope there. And then all of a sudden, Your defense back on the field, and Buffalo moves the ball down the field. Josh Allen making just tremendous plays again outside of the pocket. Those two throws to Gabriel Davis were, boy, toe tap like just silly stuff there from Josh Allen, and then the one of the most boneheaded plays I've probably seen in my time covering the Colts. 4th and 3, Buffalo at your 26-yard line. I asked DeForest Buckner after the game. I just said simply, and this was in no way for him to, was I trying to bait him into throwing a teammate under the bus? Frank really didn't give us a great answer on it, and so I just felt like some defensive teammate had to be asked. Did you guys tell each other before the snap? Like, watch, they're going to try and draw, us off sides. We have to hold our ground and realize that that's not going to happen. They're going to kick a field goal in this situation. And, Buckner just in the most quiet, voice just said, yes, that was discussed. And when it happened, I found myself saying, no, he didn't. No, he did not. And it's kind of rare for me to speak out loud like that in covering a game. Usually, I'm pretty. I don't know if stoic's the right word, but I'm pretty calm and realize that I've got a job to do and need to kind of analyze things pretty quickly and move on. But I just had this feeling that it was Toure right away. And not Al-Qadim Muhammad. Sometimes when you see 97, 57, you're kind of wondering who it is. But I said it on Twitter, and I'll say it again. I'm not stunned by it. That's kind of Kamoko Toure. I think it's very fair, and I think internally, inside that building, they've wondered at times too. Just how locked in is he? And sometimes when you see guys go off sides in that situation, it really is just kind of a hard count early on in the play clock, or at least like midway through the play clock. But at that point, it seemed like Josh Allen had kind of given up. And John McDermott was right next to the official, getting ready to call the timeout as well. And just what a boneheaded mistake by him. If you want to circle one play that just is inexcusable, that to me over anything else is probably the play of the game, because again, it gives Buffalo hope, more momentum, and it costs you 4 points. And now all of a sudden, instead of potentially 10-all, and who knows, I know Tyler Bass made a long field goal, but I mean, that would have been 44 yards, late half, rookie kicker. Okay, let's say he does make it. It's still 10-10 and a half. But now you give up a first down there, and 2 plays later, Josh Allen's in the end zone, and you're playing from behind. And it's 14-10 and a half, and now they get the ball to start the third quarter. I'm such a big believer in game flow, and I thought that really, I don't know what the win percentage per se is, like from the ESPN stats and info or whatnot, but in my mind, that went from a, wow, you feel pretty good about the first half, to, oh boy, this is going to be a struggle to win this football game. And just in my mind, it probably shifted, 20, 30% chances to win that game. And I know that's not right analytically, but that play just was so deflating to me to see Toure. And I think he got benched. I would have to go back and look. I don't think he played in the second half. And if you watch, Brian Baker, the defensive line coach on the sidelines, when Toure goes off sides, he is just, how? In the playoffs, when you're facing elite opponents, you cannot get away with stuff like that. And Toure, it's just, you're a little bit worried about him, I think. Again, fully locked in, mentally, things like that. Well, you better be a darn good pass rusher to make up for it. And again, coming back from the injury, but he didn't give you enough. And, how much can you live with that? It's just, that play takes your most dynamic speed rusher off the field for the second half. And yeah, the Colts eventually got some pressure, but still, it kind of forced your hand a little bit from a defensive personnel. So I thought that sequence right there, the play call on the 3rd and goal and the Toure offsides, of all the missed opportunities, and we'll rattle them off, that is what I think really has to make Frank Reich and Chris Ballard sleepless tonight. The other missed opportunities in no order. I've got red zone. I've got clock management in the second half. And I've got drops and certainly the missed field goal. I guess let's go with drops, 6 to 7. Actually, it's probably more than that. I would say probably 7 to 8 catchable footballs. Pittman, 2 catchable ones. And man, he had a really good game besides that. Hilton, a couple contested catches. It's like, all right, I know it's early in the game, but man, that's a quiet. If that's T.Y. Hilton's last game in Colts uniform, that's quiet. I mean, what do you have? 3 catches? 2 catches for 32 yards on 5 targets? And what? Those 2 catches came, I don't know, I felt like they were somewhat early. I mean, the first play of the game. That again, just stings. I got to write that down to look it up afterwards. Doing a little work here as I record. Taylor had the 2 drops. Just both of those were brutal drops, just wide open, and he had been so sound this year. 1 drop and 39 targets up until that point. The field goal miss by Hot Rod again, such a promising year for him and so solid in many respects. But I know we harped on this a lot when he was signed and kept on the 53-man roster and beat out Chase McLaughlin. I talked about some things that were concerning a little bit. Length wasn't that big of an issue to me at the time. It was more of NFL pressure and kicking outdoors, I guess, on a more, a routine basis. Now, obviously, he kicked outdoors in college, but I guess maybe a little bit more inclement weather. But certainly just pressure. Kicking in an NFL playoff game and having just constant pressure throughout the season, and just mentally, you could tell on the longer field goals, it was in his head a little bit. He was chunking those kicks. Boy, that 33-yarder, yeah, it just has to go in. Has to go in. Point blank period. Red zone, you're 1 of 4. Matt Milano read the screen beautifully on that first drive of the game, and stopping Taylor on that screen. The Colts have gone to that a few times. Then the other failed conversion is when Pittman and Rivers couldn't hook up on the 4th and goal. Then you got stuffed, right, on the other 4th and goal? Yeah, because that was the back-to-back drives of, 12 minutes and no points. Pull that up here. Was it it wasn't a full. Oh, the back-to-back 12 minutes, combined 12-minute drives with no points. That was Hot Rod missing the 33-yarder there. See if I can find where that other 4th and goal was. So yeah, we talked about it prior to the game that red zone would be arguably the most important statistic in the game. And Frank Reich mentioned that as well. And, I know I talked about it last Monday and even on Beers with Bowen about, okay, when you get the opportunity to convert drives, it's not just pounding Taylor and playing off that. And the Colts did that beautifully for so much of that game. But it also comes down to you've got to simply finish off drives. Tennessee, last year in the playoffs, it's not just Henry doing it all. It's 5 of 5 in the red zone. And you go 1 of 4 in the red zone. Buffalo goes 2 of 2, and that's the difference. That is the difference. Honestly, if you would have showed me just that stat before the game and not all the others, I would have said, oh, yeah, Buffalo wins. Yeah, you can't go 1 of 4 in the red zone, and they go 2 of 2 and expect to win. That was backbreaking, especially when you think of, literally you had 9 real drives, 9 series with the ball outside of that kneel down. All 9 of them get to Buffalo territory. You moved it. The best, most consistent, you moved it really all year long. Tennessee would be the only other game down there on that Thursday nighter. But this one, considering the magnitude, I would say, and Buffalo's got a better defense than Tennessee. Tremendous moving the football. And you've got 24 points. And that might sound like a lot, but it's not. When you get 9 drives in their territory, that's not. And Man, just inside the 20 there. I think something that you have to look at long and hard again in the offseason. This is just another, and I tweeted this during the game, of when you get down there and you get inside the 10, your lack of mobility at the quarterback position hinders you. You go 1 of 4. Buffalo goes 2 of 2, and look at the 2 Buffalo touchdowns. Josh Allen runs one in, and the other one is the fake run by Allen. Boom, kind of Tebow pop pass. Great design by Brian Dable, and touchdown. Their quarterback makes 2 plays with his legs. Your quarterback cannot do that. And I know that's like I'm simplifying things a little bit too much there. Like Philip Rivers does a lot of good for you. And again, I thought Rivers played pretty well, honestly. But when you get inside that area of the field, you just get exposed. And the Colts, this was an issue all year long. There were some moments where the red zone was a little bit better, but for the most part, red zone and even third down was better today, but red zone hindered you. And then lastly, I guess on the mistake list, just the clock management. It's always been kind of my concern when you have a head coach that also is handling the play calls. I don't think they're as focused enough on challenges and things like that. And that challenge by Reich was awful. Just an awful challenge. And yeah, that's somebody from the booth, but Reich mentioned it. I was more of sideline yelling at him. Challenge it. Everyone on the sideline. Challenge it. And they actually went to a TV timeout there. So you could have been patient with that challenge flag there. And Reich kind of pulled the Bruce Arians. Remember in 2012 when Arians took over for Chuck? Oh my gosh, he'd throw the challenge flag. I swear he threw it 10 times a game. He used to throw it. I was like, man, he's testing out his arm, going back to his Temple days. But yeah, just a terrible challenge by Frank. Cost you a timeout, and they take the other timeout early in that third quarter on an offensive drive, and then boom, there you are, late game, and you don't have that extra timeout. Absolutely kills you, and like in an interesting way. And obviously, if this game would have really turned at the end, we'd be debating the Zach Pascal fumble a whole lot. That was just a terrible non-overturn by the NFL on that play. But Sean McDermott has an extra timeout there, so he's able to take the timeout, and then they end up reviewing it there. Frank, if he would have gotten into position there late where, let's say there was another big challengeable play with 5 minutes to go in the game, and Frank only had one timeout left, he might not challenge it because that one timeout's so precious, and he can't afford to lose it. And when you're in games of this magnitude, those decisions, rightfully so, get scrutinized more. The margin for error is so slim. When you're playing in the number 2 seed and that type of offense, they shrink even more. And so that's why you have to mention that. Drops, red zone, field goal miss, catchable balls. I mean, probably 5 outright drops, maybe 6. And I'd probably put another couple on there that could have been caught. I'm thinking of, Hines had one in the flat. Maybe one of those Hilton ones. But yeah, the missed opportunities. Just so, I hope you guys aren't listening to this before you go to bed Saturday night, because those will keep you up at night. Just some other general thoughts, I guess. Again, I thought Rivers did a lot of good. I thought it was probably the most pre-snap communication changing he had to do. Deal with that crowd noise a bit. Man, I feel like the play clock was at 0 on every single snap. The defense wasn't perfect, but you know what? I thought they were. I would have signed up for that defensive effort, honestly. I mean, 27 points for Buffalo. They go 2 of 9 on third down. What I liked was the start. They had, 3 and outs on their first 4 drives? I mean, again, sign me up. That's ideal. Now, yeah, Josh Allen completed 12 in a row at one point, and yeah, there was, again, it was not perfect by any means. But think about how Buffalo scored, I guess, on the first 2 touchdowns. The first touchdown comes from them backed up again. Allen scrambles in the 2nd and 10, gets the first down. This is 3 straight plays in a row. Allen scrambles in 2nd and 10 for the first down. Flick of the wrist, deep ball to Diggs right over the middle. Kari Willis, big hit. I mean, just can't teach that. And then he scrambles. He gets out. outside the pocket again and finds Gabriel Davis on the sideline, and then they're moving and they score, on the pop pass. And then on his second touchdown, that was the failed goal to go situation, and they're backed up. And I get the analytics, and Frank mentioned this strong go, and like I'm fine with that. I'm not this analytics as gospel person, but like in a game of that magnitude, I totally understand going for it there. And I'm not like, I don't know, maybe some of you disagree with me, but I'm not like super super just like rip Frank to shreds because he's all in on this analytics approach. No, I thought the Colts needed to be aggressive today. I thought that was part of the game plan there. And I think sometimes it just comes down to execution, flat out. Like there was that other short yard, and I'm trying to scroll through the it was right here. Second quarter, you've got a 3rd and goal at the 1, and that's when Taylor just got stoned. Oh no, that was the that was the old that was the old pitch play here. Where just Burton came in motion. I forget when the play was, but Burton comes in motion, kind of a backside block, similar to that play in Houston when he had the 4th and 1, and Hines got stuffed in that play. It was a similar play to that, and your offensive line fails you there, but then also, Taylor just gets. I'm pretty sure it was Taylor gets stuffed in that short yardage. So yes, it was some play calling on the 3rd and goal there in the second quarter, but then also there's a amount of just execution as well, where you just expect your guys to be better, and rightfully so. That your guys in the trenches, like flat out, they've got to win some situations for you as well. And I thought that was one of those cases there where you got stuffed in that goal line situation. It's a 2-point conversion. That was the other kind of stuff where, again, you're at the 1-yard line. You have these all pros. Yes, you go for it there. I thought that was the wise thing to do, and I know that didn't really matter because you ended up getting the second 2-point conversion, but people were certainly freaking out about that. But going back to those Josh Allen touchdowns, he had those 3 plays in a row: the scramble, the flick to Diggs, and then the outside the pocket to Gabriel Davis. And then really he made the absurd plays there late first half as well when he had those 2 in a row to Gabriel Davis. I think both were reviewed right on the sidelines, like just. What's your defense supposed to do there? Honestly, yeah, maybe a little bit more of a consistent rush to where you keep him in the well and you keep him confined like you did in the fourth quarter. But still, I thought your defense, all in all, played, considering the effort I saw, out of the last, month and a half of the season. That's pretty much what I expected there. Just a few individuals that I thought played really well. Michael Pittman, yes, maybe should have hauled in that touchdown, but you really gotta, what you had out of Pittman over the last month of the year, I thought that was a big step forward for him in his end of his rookie season. Certainly Jack Doyle, probably his best game of the year. And I thought Darius Leonard, for the most part, played like an all-pro. Yes, you were missing that big-time game-changing turnover out of him, but I thought that was a pretty good performance, especially early on, out of Leonard. So, again, just wanted to cover that, a little bit of what I liked, what I didn't like, and we'll get into Twitter questions now. Not a lot of them, but we'll hit on them. All right, this one comes from Colts fan for life. Wow, what a great game. I think we earned some respect today from Bills fans. Tough loss. We were in that game all the way to the end. I truly believe we played better as an entire team and could have won if Reich just took what was given to us. However, I also feel our ultimate Achilles heel was Rivers, his accuracy and his panic throws. He underthrew receivers, then had to adjust instead of running free, and that 4th down toss to the corner of the end zone was maddening. I feel a future Hall of Fame QB should make that throw with his eyes closed. So with Reich saying Rivers is coming back, can we just expect another heart attack year? Well, we'll see how that plays out. I know Frank said that yes, he would like Phillip back. I don't know, it wasn't the most confident answer that I've ever heard in my life. Phillip also said, he's has a decision to make. Ultimately, again, if I'm saying who's the week 1 starter, I'm going with Rivers, but we'll see how all of those conversations play out. The Phillip Rivers that I just watched in 2020, I don't think it's that far off from what I expected. He gives you a floor that is high enough to make the playoffs, but I said it all year long. I felt like the ceiling for this football team was winning 1 playoff game. And that's where I think the debate about quarterback is. I don't think it's like that much of a heart attack from Rivers. Like, I don't know, how many times in the fourth quarter do you really just make some costly fatal error over the 17 games we just watched? Now, they weren't in a lot of those situations, but part of that is because, again, Rivers is playing good enough football to where you're not in those situations. So, I mean, that's Rivers. I'm not ripping him by any means for today's performance. If I'm giving him a grade, I'd probably give him a B minus, and a lot of that just comes from the lack of red zone. Honestly, I thought he made some throws down the field early on that were huge. I also thought he threw some balls up that I'm like, oh boy. But he gives guys chances. And Mo Alley-Cox and Jack Doyle, Michael Pittman made some of those plays. I didn't turn the ball over. Certainly you would have signed up for that at the start of the day as well. So I just think we know who he is. And this is it. Like, there's not going to be a whole lot of wavering one way or the other. I mean, he's 39 years old. The guy's been in the league for 17 years. Rick Cardette. I was wondering why Rivers wastes so much time approaching Ryan Kelly every single snap, including the final 2 minutes. Defenses continue making moves after that. Yeah, I mean, certainly the play clock bled. I don't know about you guys. I just thought the last drive had just major lack of urgency. Major lack of urgency. Moving way too slow. Not enough vertical. You had 1 timeout. And, you need to get into, Rodrigo field goal range. That's not, Justin Tucker field goal range. You got to get down there. I thought it looked like a team that hadn't been in many of those situations this year. Or any. And they hadn't. That was my biggest worry. Rivers from behind. But yeah, I thought just line of scrimmage communication, that credit Bills Mafia. That 6,700 made some noise. All right, Michael, how did you defend quarterbacks like Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and of course Patrick Mahomes? At this point, our D cannot stop QBs like that on a consistent basis. They got lucky against Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay. We have pass rush, but is it that dominant twitch edge rusher that we miss? Yeah, I mean, certainly. You miss edge rush, and, you have a bit of an unknown future at corner. I mean, you better be willing to pay Xavier Rhodes if you want to keep him. And yeah, edge rush, he just consistently was not good enough at all. At all. Jake, I don't believe Frank will be fired or is on the hot seat, but will he prove to be a limiting factor on this team? How many times do you have to hear, I didn't adjust, I hurried, I made a bad call, I didn't have an answer? Limiting factor is kind of an interesting phrase to use. First off, yeah, I mean, Frank's not getting fired, obviously. He shouldn't be getting fired. No. Let's look at the big picture. Colts controlled that game offensively a lot. 9 drives, 9 real drives, all getting into Buffalo territory. I don't care if you're playing, Jacksonville. That's impressive. Got Michael Pittman involved in ways we really hadn't seen. It just comes down to a little bit of that situational. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, that's kind of just life in the NFL. I tend to think Frank as a play caller is an advantage more than he's not. And I know people will push back on that. But I just thought overall it was a pretty well-executed game plan, well-scripted game plan. It just comes down to a few of those plays. And when you're on that level and when you're in that game, that's the difference. I mean, think about the Seahawks in that Super Bowl against the Patriots. You're one Marshawn Lynch run away from Darrell Bevell maybe being a head coach. And now look at, where Seattle is and just, not being able to get over that hump. That's where the missed opportunities come into play. So, look, in the NFL, you're going to have a lot of ups and downs. And I think what you have to appreciate about Frank, and this is me, I don't know, maybe going out on a limb a little bit, but I just think Frank isn't stubborn. And I think he'll look long and hard about how he's handled, whether it's running back rotation, short yardage, red zone. And that will be a huge point of emphasis for him as a head coach and a play caller this offseason. And it needs to be. You have an advantage as a play caller. You do. Frank is a better than most play caller in the NFL. But certainly he's got room to improve. And I also think, honestly, like Frank's transparency is probably what leads to a little bit of this. If I didn't adjust, I hurried, I made a bad call. And I also just think the Colts have got to get a little better personnel-wise. And, I'm not like acting like that's all in Chris Ballard. Frank has a lot to say in the personnel, but I just think wideout-wise, tight end future-wise, and certainly quarterback, I think you are limited in some of those situations. All right, David, is this too crazy of a take to move on from Eberflus? He is excellent at developing linebackers, looking back at his Dallas days. The Colts have issues developing other corners and defensive line. We have the linebackers, but if we can't develop other positions and we have a problem somewhere that needs to be addressed. Well, David, my first thought is, how much is that on position coaches? Kind of coordinator of the unit. I don't know how much of that is player development. Maybe some of it falls on you, I guess, because you oversee all of it. But, I know the Colts have a new defensive line coach this year. That wasn't the guy they had last year. Wanted to go coach with Matt Rule in Carolina. I think people know how I feel. I don't love the scheme, but I feel like Flus deserves some credit. I do think this defense has taken some strides. You guys heard me say it all year long. I don't think this is an elite defense. I think they'll end the year probably in the 10 to 12 range. Said that so much during the middle of the year. Like, there's going to be a regression. I feel like this is a fluke to that, high, top 5, top 3 level. And they, that's where they ended the year. But edge rush, corner group, yeah. And I just think there's been some misevaluations, really, more than anything. And some of that, again, this is a collaborative effort, scouting and drafting. But, from Quincy Wilson to Rock Yassin to Terrell Basham to Kamoko Ture to Ben Banogu, at those important premium positions, Chris has drafted really, really well at a lot of spots, but definitely not there. All right, I need a water break. Shout out to Anna Lubbers, my sister-in-law, gave me a great mug with a picture of me and Rosie Bowe on it that I've been drinking out of since Christmas with a Kobe Bryant girl dad quote on it. I love it. We need a little break from talking about that game, so hopefully you all can understand that. Okay, especially with this question. Ooh. All right, Mac. That was pathetic. I'm sorry, but we cannot have Phillip Rivers back next season. That was a season of good, but just not enough. That's where Rivers gives you. Maybe. That's what Rivers gives you. Oh, and then he followed up. Max sent then a little bit later. He goes, maybe I was overreacting, but I still think we are capped in potential. Well, I think a slight overreaction, but I would say capped in potential, honestly, is a pretty accurate way to put it. How I look at quarterback is this. How do you create the most margin for error within your football team? And also, how do you try and create the best opportunity for sustained success? Twofold. Like, Josh Allen gave that football team for Buffalo today a lot of margin for error. Think about those plays he made off script. When things break down up on the whiteboard, where can you get, I don't know, a little bit more? Where can you try and offset maybe a lack of a pass rush or average running backs or a couple missed field goals? And the quarterback who touches the ball in every play, that's where you can create that. And then obviously this sustained success speaks for itself. Rivers gives you a high floor of a team that is very capable of making the playoffs. But I just think right now, in this conference, unless something crazy happens next year, You know, you expect Buffalo to be there. You expect Baltimore to be there. You expect Kansas City to be there. I mean, boom, 3 young quarterbacks. I mean, what about Cleveland? Tennessee has proven not to be going anywhere over the last 4 years. It just, to me, if you're going to do the Band-Aid, if you're going to do the short term, we'll see how, I don't know. Let me check this Tampa Bay score. I feel like they're winning. We'll see how that Tampa Bay games play out. But these Band-Aid moves, these 1 year sort of thing at the age of 38, 39, to me, you would want a little bit more than just one and done. All right, Brian. Isaiah Rodgers seemed to prove he was not to be picked on when he entered the game. What's his ceiling? How does he fit in with Kenny Moore? Yeah, Brian, that's a good question. Isaiah obviously didn't play a whole lot on defense this season. What I liked about his film at UMass was I just thought he had some Kenny Moore instincts and competitive nature to him. I thought he was super, super competitive on the ball at UMass. Now, I think where you have to be honest with yourself is, again, like you said, how does he fit in with Kenny Moore? Is Kenny Moore that nickel, and then can Isaiah play outside? What about Marvell Tell? I think that's curious as well. So it is a couple of what ifs, though. I mean, where's the jump for Rock Yassin? Is there a jump? Corner will be an interesting position just to see Xavier Rhodes, that contract situation. TJ Carey's a free agent as well, and that trickle down. All right, Chris Shauna asks, really fun season this year. Thanks as always for the great podcast. I realize Josh Allen is a rare specimen, but it'd be nice to have a QB with mobility and the ability to put some zip on passes. After seeing quarterbacks like Allen and Watson, do you think Ballard goes all in on drafting a QB? Chris Shauna, I'll say this. I don't know how you don't watch those guys. I guess the double negative, I should say. I don't know how you watch those guys up close and walk away saying it doesn't need to be seriously addressed. And again, for the reasons that I mentioned above. And, I am not saying in any way, shape, or form that a drafting of whatever, Zach Wilson or Trey Lance, means that the Colts will win more games in 2021 than they would have if Phillip Rivers was their quarterback in 2021. No. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying that a young quarterback with a different skill set can open up your playbook in some ways, and then also, again, offer you the best chance at being a team that is making these opportunities happen deep into the 2020s. Because that's the thing. I mean, playoff opportunities and making Super Bowl runs, you've got to throw darts at a dartboard. I mean, you like a lot of them. Like, you've got to get in and see what happens. It's going to take a while. Peyton, 9 years before making a Super Bowl run? It is going to take, but you have to create chances, get in the dance and see what happens. But yeah, I do think that Chris looks at it and is very realistic. And I think part of that was the Buckner trade last year. Obviously, this team still has a lot of long-term answers at some very meaningful positions: quarterback, left tackle, receiver, corner, edge rusher. But I think the trade for Buckner last year was kind of like, in this defense, it's 3 technique, it's will linebacker, and it's slot corner. Those mean more than maybe others. But once that is solved, now do you feel like you have, chances just to push your chips more into the table? All right, we got a handful left here. Billy, so if we have a mobile quarterback, do we get in field goal range? How much do you think Irsay will have say in on bringing Phillip Rivers back? Irsay's definitely gonna have some say. The whole mobile quarterback. I mean, it's not that simple. If you have a mobile quarterback, boom, yeah, you're guaranteed to get in field goal range. I mean, just because a mobile quarterback, it doesn't mean that you're gonna have 9 drives, get into Buffalo territory like you did. Again, Phillip Rivers gives this offense a lot of hope and a lot of success. But unquestionably, it's a disadvantage that this offense has to overcome, his lack of mobility. Conroy, why not Jacoby on the Hail Mary? When Luck first came back, we brought in Brissett for a similar play. but not for old man Rivers. I do not understand that. Could you brain that for me? Excellent season. I'm looking forward to the draft. You and Chris killed it. Thank you, Conroy. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I tweeted out Jacoby question mark. I was actually surprised the ball got as far as it did, to be honest with you. And Rivers was what? He was, I think, 58% today. Again, probably 5 definite drops. So, up to 65, high 60s. That kind of would have been right around his average for the season. But I just feel like there are still some balls that are just kind of hope. Boy, you really hope. You really hope. And what does another year do to that arm? I just think those are all honest conversations that you have to have. Scotty, who knew that kicking would ultimately cost the Colts a chance in the playoffs? Well, Scotty, I would say, again, there are other things that I would put above that. But certainly, when you miss a 33-yarder and they make a 54-yarder, it's on the list. I don't know about you guys. I can't get over that Kamoko Turry penalty. I mean, what I would have paid to see, Chris Ballard or Jim Irsay at that moment. I mean, geez, but yeah, it seemed, I don't know about you guys. I feel like the 33-yarder by Hot Rod, it took a long time just to get to the uprights. To me, Hot Rod, maybe not to the extent of Rivers, but they're they're kind of like the guy that tees off first in a golf outing that hits it, 210, but he's pretty straight, pretty accurate, and that he'll be safe. I feel like that's kind of what Hot Rod and Phillip are. Pretty safe, and they'll hit 11 or 12 fairways, but when they miss, oh boy, it's bad because it just doesn't have the same pop that maybe others at their position have. I mean, that Bass dude, that was a kick. I mean, Reich was shocked by that. Reich said afterwards, he couldn't believe that he kicked it, couldn't believe he made it. I see why Buffalo drafted him. 4th rounder. Or 6th rounder. All right, 3 more. Isaiah, if you're in Indy's position, how many more seasons are you giving Reich as head coach? If Rivers returns, I'd say 1. If a new QB comes in, I'd say 2. Thanks for the great work. Well, Isaiah, you got to throw some win totals in there. If they go 10-6 with Rivers next year, you're not firing them. So I think a lot depends on your quarterback. And honestly, the wheels would really have to fall off next year with Rivers, I think, for Reich to be fired. And a lot of it would, again, have to be, I think, in-game management mistakes, things like that. Offense really, really struggling. But if you get a young quarterback in here, I do think that kind of changes a little bit. But, I talked about it before the season started. This is a very important season for Frank Reich and Chris Ballard to prove themselves without Andrew Luck. You go 11-5. That's commendable, certainly. But I think we also have to acknowledge, again, this was the easiest strength of schedule. And, where is kind of your measuring stick sort of with this? Is it, okay, you lost to every playoff team, I guess, but Kansas City, and, you obviously didn't play Kansas City. Now, very close games, and all of those games, you really didn't get blown out at all season long. So I think a lot of it, again, comes down to Jim Irsay's standard. You haven't, you've won 1 playoff game since 2014. You haven't won a division since 2014. You haven't had a home playoff game. That's what, 6 seasons? There's got to be, I would say, over 20 teams in the NFL have probably had a home playoff game in that span. And I'd probably say close to half the league's probably won multiple playoff games in that span. So I know at times, people are like, oh, Colts fan base have kind of a skewed, sense of reality in the NFL. But I just tend to think that, these are the expectations this franchise has created. And they should have high standards. This isn't Jacksonville. This isn't Cincinnati. There is a high bar. And here as of late, that playoff success hasn't been there over the last, 5 or 6 years. And so I do think that standard is there. And I, today doesn't change my opinion on it. You guys have heard of that before. I do think Chris Ballard and Frank Reich are the right people for this job, and I think they will get the Colts back to being one of the last teams standing in January and early February. But I also think that, rightfully so, the level of where this organization is at right now needs to take another step. Good football team this year. Good. Not great. Not elite. If there's not that extra playoff spot, you're not in there. So I think you just got to be realistic and honest, honestly, with the analyzation of this 2020 season. There was a lot of good. Some young players certainly have emerged, and your foundation has added some pieces. But now there are a lot of questions to answer this offseason, and you still have the most difficult question to answer. And that's long-term quarterback. And some might argue that you've added more questions. It's like, okay, Hilton's one more year closer to either being gone or, whatever. Certainly not at the number one Pro Bowl level. Costanzo, who knows? Justin Houston, underwhelming. Again, what's the answer at corner? So, Reich, hot seat. I mean, with Rivers, they'd probably have to go 7-9 or worse next year. And I get zero inkling whatsoever that Jim Irsay would have them on the hot seat or have Frank on the hot seat. Zero. If a new quarterback comes in, then that kind of throws that out the window. Almost. You really have to see development, and that's a little bit tougher one just to lay out. All right, Cody, how do the Colts feel about Jacob Eason? Oh boy, wouldn't be a pod without a Jacob Eason question. They've had a year to see him practice, but the fans really don't know what's going on. I feel like the Colts reached their ceiling with Rivers, and it's not enough to win a playoff game. Yeah, Cody, I'll say this. I think it can be enough under the right circumstance. I do think this team can win a playoff game with Philip Rivers, but going on the road facing a 2 seed, that's a little bit less than ideal. Now, Eason, the dude practiced, 6 times all year? Took actual reps and practiced 6 times? All scout team? I mean, that's like handing a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old keys to the BMW. You can't do that until you see him in a more real evaluation settings. All right, lastly from Doug. Hey, Kevin. It's a tough loss today, but I thought there was a lot of good from 2 rookies in a big playoff game. Taylor and Pittman. Do you think Pittman takes the next step as wide receiver number 1 next season, or do you think that role still belongs to T.Y.? Yeah, Doug. I thought Michael Pittman individually probably one of the biggest bright spots, certainly, from today. And I love seeing a little bit more to his game. Man, that deep 50-50 ball and just a few more of kind of that X wide receiver stuff out of him, that was really encouraging. He had kind of a quiet December, but I thought he took a big step forward today, and I do believe he has the ability to be the number 1 wideout. Having said that, I still think wide receiver is a very big need this offseason, and we'll see how that plays out. I think I got a couple that just slid in here I wanted to sneak in. Jordan, hey, Kevin, did Phil's press conference after the game give you a vibe that he will hang it up, or is it just emotions from losing the game? Jordan, I think it's just emotions, man. I think it's just he is such a freaking competitor. And I guess I'll say it now. We know where Philip Rivers is as a quarterback, and I've mentioned that many times. But as a teammate, as a competitor, as an athlete, as a fan of a team, gosh, you gotta love. He just pours himself into it. And I guess I feel kind of a similar feeling about Ian Book with Notre Dame. Like, I know there's a ceiling. I know Ian Book isn't a, top 5 college quarterback. And, yeah, I mean, there are limitations. But the guy invests so much. And Rivers has had a tremendous, tremendous career. But this is just the elephant in the room. And I think that's where his emotions came out, of just knowing it's a missed opportunity. And they really believed. Frank Reich got that team to believe. And that's another thing. I mean, you talk about credit to Frank. I mean, they played loose. They were in that game from the onset and really controlled that game. All right, I think that's everybody. Jordan, thank you again. I think Phillip plays next year, but that's just me, kind of gut, very 5 hour after the game reaction. So we'll see how all that plays out. Like I said earlier, we'll come back sometime next week with a recap of Frank Wright, Chris Ballard, some players talking at the end of the season. Colts are sending out their media schedule as we speak. Looks like Frank's going to talk 3 o'clock tomorrow. Some players at 11 a.m. Again, we'll wait and see on kind of when Chris is going to talk. So that'll probably be when we come back, as long as it's not like, I don't know, next Friday or something. I think every GM, talks within a week after the season ends. I believe that's kind of an NFL rule. And I guess lastly, just, thanks to everyone that tuned into Beers with Bowen on Thursday. I think a few of those overs hit. So I think we had the over on Taylor, over on Pittman, over on Josh Allen yards, over on points. I think those all hit. So yeah, won you a little bit of money there, and I tweeted this out on Saturday night, and I'll say it here. Just thank you guys so much for listening all season long. I know what it's like to be a fan. It can be a wave of emotions, and at times you probably think I'm the biggest idiot in the world, and couldn't disagree with me more. But I genuinely appreciate the passion, the loyalty, and the curiosity as well from everyone out there, just with questions, thoughts, comments. It means a whole lot. And for those of you that, read my content, that means even more to me, because I really appreciate that. And that's going to be really consistent throughout the off season as usual, or even watch us, Beers with Bowen, or some of the other video stuff that we do over on YouTube. So I know today sucked, and I get that. Like I said earlier, these opportunities you don't take for granted. I think there's a lot of encouraging things about this team moving forward. There's a lot of big questions that need to be answered, but I still think it's a good time to be a Colts fan moving forward. This is disappointing. You made a lot of win now moves, and you expected to be playing, I think, past wild card weekend. That's kind of the thought process, I think, with some of those moves. But still, from a young guy standpoint, when you're talking about Taylor, Hines, Pittman, potentially Campbell, Nelson, Smith, Kelly, Buckner, Leonard, Okereke, Willis, Blackman, Sanchez, Rhodes, Hot Rod, George Odom, shout out to him as an all-pro. There's a lot of really good young talent on this team. And now you got to sustain that, deal with some cap situations, and then answer some big questions in free agency and the draft. So we'll have it covered all offseason long. We're not going anywhere. One pod every single week, sometimes 2 a week during the offseason. And we'll come back next week, midweek. So thank you, everybody. I've enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you midweek.